Delighted on this episode to be talking with author Thomas Cullen. Thomas, thank you for stopping by the Zoom chat.
It's my pleasure, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime, anytime. I know that you are known for a prominent career, but you're also known as an author. You have the book Charlie Man, which has been recently released. And by means of the first question, I am curious about how this authoring and engagement with the written word became part of your life.
Sure. So I guess I'm best known as a lawyer turned judge, but my first love has always been writing. I started writing early on in life, high school. I wrote for my college newspaper. And even as a practicing lawyer, I regularly wrote op-eds and essays on myriad topics from current events, politics, legal issues, and the like. When I became a judge, because of ethical considerations, I could no longer write about politics and current events. So I
Makes
decided to
sense.
pivot a little bit. And over the last few years, I wrote more kind of public interest pieces. I wrote a piece for Cardinal News in Virginia about the joys of fly fishing in winter and attending an all boys summer camp and how that was an integral part of my life. And through that process, I was inspired to sit down and author Charlie Man. It was an idea that had been percolating in my mind for a number of years. I generally had a sense of the first chapter and who some of the characters were, but I never had the time or the inspiration or inclination to actually sit down and attempt to bang it out.
Well, I imagine that your career in law has in some way informed your writing craft. Anything that you'd like to say about that, how the two weave together?
Sure. So I think some folks that may not realize that lawyers do a lot of writing in their professional lives. You're constantly writing briefs. As a judge, you write opinions and orders, and legal writing is a different type of writing, right? You have a different audience and a different purpose, but done well, I think legal writing can be provide a good foundation for good writing generally. I was fortunate to have mentors and lawyers that I worked with who were good teachers along the way, and I learned early on to write in a way that was accessible to non-lawyers, right? So when someone reads one of my legal opinions, my goal is I want them to feel like they're picking up a newspaper or reading a newspaper on an iPad, that they understand in just simple prose. What is this case about? What are the issues? And then cogently analyze and reach a conclusion explaining why I'm deciding a certain way. So I think that particular skill, something I'd honed over a number of years, was transferable when I sat down to write a novel. It's totally different, right? You're not writing dialogue when you're writing a legal opinion, and there are many differences. But having written a lot throughout my life, it wasn't as daunting as I probably thought it would be going in.
Uh, I imagine clarity is so key in legal writing as well. You have to get that idea across.
You do, and not all lawyers are good writers. Some are better than others, but it's a critical skill and a key facet of the job.
Yeah. Now you have written a novel that's considered young adult YA, so I'm curious about your approach to YA with Charlie Man.
Sure. So I wanted to tell an authentic story in a unique place at a unique time. I'm an avid reader. I read everything from nonfiction to a lot of fiction. Um, I, I wrote this novel because I had the idea for it, right? I mean, that's the simple answer. Because of some experiences as a young man growing up in a unique place, Richmond, Virginia, in the early to mid 1990s, a time and a place that was integral in my own life. that was the inspiration for the book. And certainly certain characters and experiences provided a foundation upon which I built the plot, the setting in a unique part of the city of Richmond, and then drew on being a teenager at that particular time and having read a lot. I haven't read a lot of novels that are set right in the early to mid 1990s. Right, what was the music like? Um,
Hmm.
what was it like day to day being a 17, 18-year-old boy, right? Before the advent of social media and the internet, where you would just sit and talk, where you would use a landline telephone, where you would play CDs in your car and burn bootleg mixtapes. So that was a lot of fun to revisit that era of my own life. And hopefully the book, particularly those who aren't young adults, it will be familiar and to a certain extent comforting to revisit that particular time.
Yeah, yeah, you're definitely speaking my language and my time frame there. Yeah.
So, in that respect, it's YA, but I hope it appeals to a broader audience.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's kind of the cool thing about YA too. I know lots of adults that read YA that enjoy it, so it is important for people to know that just because something is, uh, maybe marketed or labeled as YA, everybody can really enjoy it.
Sure. And that's the hope anyway.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Now, I imagine there's a lot of yourself invested in these characters. I'm curious about how you went about crafting the characters in the novel.
Sure. So I had a good idea. The protagonist, Charlie Stewart, um, it's often said that first novels are at least partially autobiographical. And I think that's true to a certain extent. But Charlie is certainly not Thomas in all respects. But some of my experiences as a young man attending a private school, growing up in that city, having certain deep friendships and early relationships, romantic relationships and the like, provided some inspiration for the book. The other characters, I think folks who knew me and grew up with me, some of these folks will be familiar to them, although there are no dead ringers. I think
Hmm.
most of the characters are composites. Although there are certain characters who I might have known along the way, whether other friends, teachers, coaches, and folks that I encountered during those formative years.
It's nice, yeah. Uh, I'm going to take an extra question here if you're interested in going
Sure.
after it. And that is being a writer, being someone who has reflected on your youth and experiences. If you were to go back and tell yourself any advice as a young person when it comes to writing, anything that comes to mind.
So writing can be daunting, right? And but it's also one of the most fulfilling endeavors that I think someone can undertake. When I'm writing, whether it was writing this book or writing a legal opinion or writing an essay for a newspaper, you just get lost in the work, right? When things are clicking and you're able to just be totally absorbed in what you're doing, there's nothing more fulfilling than that. You just lose track of time, right? Where did the day go? So I have always enjoyed the craft of writing because it's fulfilling. I mean, it is incredibly challenging intellectually, and it's just something that it needs to be a joy, and it should be fun and fulfilling. So, which isn't to say that you don't have ups and downs and go through times where you have a drought and you're having a difficult time putting something together. But it's important just to stick with the project and move the story along, move the piece along a little bit at a time, a step at a time, and eventually you get to the finish line.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Love that. As we've been talking, there's an image of the book cover that I'll put right here between us. It looks kind of watercolored. I like the cover. Anything that you'd like to mention about that?
Sure. So I was fortunate. My publisher connected me with the illustrator, Emily Hurst Pritchett. She had done a lot of work for them. I liked her right off the bat. The inspiration, I told her generally what I wanted to accomplish. So that particular painting is the house on a bluff above the James River and a part of the river called the Pony Pasture, where there are a lot of boulders in the water and a low head dam, which features prominently in the story, kind of appears off to the left. So that is a place and a setting in Richmond where I spent a lot of time as a 17, 18-year-old boy. And part of the book is based there. So I knew that's what I wanted on the cover, and she certainly accomplished that in spades.
Uh, but I love that you know the emotional architecture of the book so well, the geographic location, all of those pieces make for a stronger story. If I'm a listener out there and I want to find out more, if I want to follow your writing career, get a copy of the book, any places online or in person that I might go.
Sure. So, given the nature of my day job, I don't do a lot of social media
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
for obvious reasons. My publicist and the publisher have done a great job of putting some things out there. I have a page, PR by the book, an author's page at Brandy Lane Publishing. I have an author page there. The book is available for pre-order at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and on many other online sites. And if you just Google my name, maybe Judge, you'll come across things that I've written, non Charlie Man, non young YA, but some op eds and other pieces for the New York Times, Cardinal News, Richmond Times Dispatch, and the like. If you're interested in any of that, I'm not hard to find.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, always delighted to talk authoring, always delighted to talk about writing in the Appalachian region that has a close and strong place in my heart, and certainly glad to have you back anytime.